and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Zara Seidler.
I'm Lucy Tassell.
A legal challenge to block a Sydney private boys' school from going co-ed failed in a New South Wales court this week. Newington College's plan to open enrolments to girls first made headlines over a year ago when a group of parents, old boys and students gathered outside the school in protest. Today, we'll bring you up to speed on this high-profile case, including a breakdown of what the Supreme Court's decision means for the school.
Zara, we have talked about this Newington co-ed controversy before, but It's been a while since we've heard much about it. Can you kind of bring us up to speed on the context surrounding the case? What do we need to know about the school?
So Newington is a prestigious independent school, largely based in Sydney's inner west, but also has a primary school campus on the North Shore. Since the late 1800s, and I guess central to the story, Newington has been a private boys' school. However, as we foreshadowed, in November last year, the college announced plans to open up enrolments to girls. Now, under a phased plan, its kindergarten and year 5 classrooms would be co-ed from 2026, so from next year, before girls are accepted into years 7 and 11 in 2028. As these students progress through their education, the college said that it would become fully co-educational by 2033, with the first co-educational cohort graduating in 2029. So I say that all to paint the picture that it has traditionally always been a private boys' school, but that there were these plans that were made clear last year, and it was always going to be a phased approach towards co-education.
Do they explain why they're doing this now?
Yeah, it's a good question. It follows a trend of single-sex schools across the country moving into co-education. When it comes to Newington specifically, they cited several reasons for the move. Firstly, it said that the college council, so a board of decision makers, has a responsibility to, quote, protect and embrace the future of Newington as well as its present. I want to read a bit of that statement because I think that it explains this idea of the future and why Newington is thinking about the future. So it says that the decision is part of ensuring the college remains, quote, in step with the society it is part of. It goes on to say, our students will enter a world that will require them to walk and work alongside all genders collaboratively, respectfully, and empathetically. It says, we believe the best way to prepare them for these roles is for different genders to learn alongside each other in an everyday, unremarkable way during their childhood and their adolescence. The school also cited diversity and inclusiveness as important considerations that underpinned this decision.
Yeah. So then, schools announce things all the time and they don't end up in court.
No, I'd say it's pretty rare for it to end up in a court case.
So why has this rare occurrence happened?
Look, I don't think that it is hyperbolic of me to say that there was a lot of passionate dialogue when it came to this decision. There was both emphatic support from one cohort, whether that be of alumni, current students, parents, whoever it was. But on the other side, there was also a strong cohort of people who were against the decision by Newington to transition to co-education.
Yeah.
You may remember the headlines about this after a small but vocal group of parents, old boys and students, they all gathered outside the school last year holding signs and protesting against the school's decision to start enrolling girls. One of those protesters called the decision at the time not just a change in policy, but an erosion of our heritage. And so then there was this petition signed by parents against the school's decision to open up enrolment to girls. And ultimately, this backlash all came to a head when a lawsuit, as you said, was launched against the school last year in the New South Wales Supreme Court.
Why don't these protesters want the school to become co-ed?
At the time of the protests, the group cited research that was commissioned by Catholic Schools New South Wales that suggested that single-sex schools can improve academic performance and can increase student self-esteem. The protesters said that by becoming co-ed, the students were risking losing these potential benefits that they said were afforded to students that attended single-sex schools. The study analysed NAPLAN test data that found that overall a, quote, modest academic advantage for single-sex schools, with the advantage generally greater for boys' schools than girls' schools, and a particularly high lead for boys' schools in numeracy. It should be said, though, there is so much conflicting evidence in this space.
Yeah.
So, for example, just to highlight one other one other area here. Research from 2019 suggests that students in coeducational schools learn at the same speed or even faster than their segregated counterparts in single-sex schools. But again, this idea that the students at the single-sex school were at an academic advantage by being there, that was one of the reasons why there were protests to the plan to transition.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating kind of idea to think about. You went to a co-ed school, I went to a single-sex school. Here we both are in the same place at the end of the day. What do we need to know about the lawsuit? Because you need to have like a legal grounds. You can't just say, I don't like this. Let's go to court.
Hello, Billy here from TDA. We have just looked at our YouTube analytics and 95% of you who are watching our videos aren't subscribing. If you want to help independent media like us grow, the best way you can do that is by pressing subscribe. Thank you so much, and back to the video.
Yeah, so while those were some of the reasons why protesters were against the plan, you're right, there needed to be a legal ground for a suit to be brought. And so this claim that was in the New South Wales Supreme Court centred around the school's founding trust deed.
Okay.
Now, that was written in 1873 and it said it was established to provide an efficient course of education for youth. Youth. I emphasize that word because that is at the centre of this case.
Yeah.
The case, or at least the lead plaintiff in this case, was a Newington student. We know that he is unnamed and remained unnamed during the course of the proceedings. But basically, the argument that was being put forward by his lawyers was that the word youth in that sentence, in the founding trust, was intended only to mean boys. And so under this argument, the school is basically breaching the terms of the trust by becoming co-ed. The trust being what funds the school and what dictates its future. And so this, as I said, just centralized around this one word, youth. And what does that word mean? And what was that word intended to mean?
So what did the court think about this argument?
Well, on Wednesday, the Supreme Court Justice Guy Parker ruled against the student, so against this case. He concluded that the word youth in the trust deed was used in a gender-neutral sense. So he didn't find that it was specifically only meant to talk about boys or men, and therefore Justice Parker ruled that the document does not mandate male-only enrolment at Newington. And as a result of that, Newington will now transition to co-ed as planned with girls starting from next year because this case failed and the plan was always to transition from next year. And now that legal obstacle has been overcome.
Wow. So what's the school said about that?
So a statement from Newington headmaster Michael Parker said that the school welcomed the court's decision. It was interesting. During the week before the decision was handed down, I was looking at the Newington website. It has like an FAQ about becoming co-ed. And in it, it's like, how will it work and what year will it happen? And then the last one is, and what's all this about a court case? And the school had to say, yes, there's this court case. No, we don't intend for it to change any plans. So really the school has welcomed the decision. They said, we remain excited to build on our rich history and traditions by taking Newington into our next era. That headmaster, Michael Parker, added, we are optimistic that the court's determination will now pave the way for our community to move forward together. We look forward to now uniting around our future vision for the school. Of course, they're calling out the fact that it has caused so much division. There have been such strong feelings on both sides, whether that be from old boys, whether that be from current parents, current students, future students. But as we led with at the top, this does seem to be a trend that is occurring across not just New South Wales, but across the country. As single-sex schools begin to allow girls, boys to enter.
Well, thank you so much for explaining that, Zara.
Thank you, Lucy. And thank you for joining us for another episode of The Daily Aus. That wraps up a big week in the news. If you learnt something this week, hitting subscribe or follow on whatever platform you are listening or watching us on helps us grow and helps us continue doing content like this each and every day. We'll be back with the headlines this afternoon, but until then, have a great day.